The morning sky above New York City changed forever at 9:17 a.m. On a Tuesday in April, Peter Collins was in the middle of his morning coffee when his phone buzzed with emergency alerts. He looked up from his apartment balcony and saw it, a massive, crystalline vessel floating silently above the skyline. It shimmered in the morning light, casting rainbow reflections across the glass towers of Manhattan. Peter's phone rang. It was his boss at the State Department. "Collins, get to the office now. It's happening everywhere. London, Beijing, Moscow, Delhi, they're over every major city." Peter grabbed his coat and rushed out. On the streets, people stood frozen, looking up. Some cried, others took videos. But there was no panic, just a collective held breath. The vessel made no threatening moves. It simply hung there, quiet and waiting. At the State Department, screens showed the same scene playing out across the world. 37 identical ships positioned over major cities. No weapons fired, no demands made. "The president wants you at the UN, his boss said, handing Peter a folder. "Emergency session in an hour. Everyone's sending their top people." "Why?" "Me?" Peter asked. At 45, he had spent 20 years in diplomatic service, but he wasn't the most senior official. "Because you wrote that paper 3 years ago about first contact protocols. Looks like you're about to find out if your theories work." The United Nations building was surrounded by police and military. Inside, representatives from every nation gathered in tense discussion. The Secretary General called for order. "We have received a transmission," she announced. "They want to talk." On the main screen, a face appeared. It had a vaguely human shape, but with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Large, deep eyes took up much of its face. When it spoke, its mouth didn't match the words they heard. "People of Earth, we are the Luminari. We come in peace and friendship. We have observed your world for many cycles and believe the time for contact has arrived. We wish to establish diplomatic relations." The room erupted in shouting. The Secretary General called again for order. "How do we know your intentions are peaceful?" she asked. The being tilted its head. "If conquest were our goal, would discussion be necessary? We have technology to achieve that without announcing our presence. We seek exchange, not dominance. To demonstrate our intentions, we will remain in neutral space and request a single representative to begin dialogue." After hours of debate, a selection committee was formed. By evening, they had their answer. Peter Collins found himself chosen as Earth's first liaison to an alien civilization. "Your background in conflict resolution and cultural diplomacy makes you uniquely qualified," the Secretary General told him. "And frankly, the major powers couldn't agree on one of their own people." Peter felt the weight of 7 billion lives on his shoulders as he was escorted to the rooftop where a small shuttle waited. It had no visible propulsion system, just the same crystalline material as the larger ships. The door opened without a sound. Peter took a deep breath and stepped inside. The journey lasted only minutes. Through the transparent walls, Peter watched New York shrink below him. The shuttle docked with the larger vessel, and Peter found himself in a room with walls that seemed made of light. A figure entered, taller than a human but moving with graceful steps. "I am Zix, diplomatic liaison for the Luminari Collective. Welcome, Peter Collins of Earth." Peter noticed the alien knew his name, though it hadn't been transmitted. "How did you know who I am?" he asked. ZYX made a gesture that might have been a smile. "We have been listening to your broadcasts for decades. We learned your languages, studied your cultures. We waited until we believed contact would not cause harm to your societal development." Over the next several hours, Zix explained the basics of Luminari civilization. They came from a system 17 light-years from Earth. Their society spanned multiple planets, across several star systems. They had achieved interstellar travel thousands of years ago. "Why contact us now?" Peter asked. "Your species stands at a crossroads," Zix said. "You have advanced technology but remain divided. You are capable of great creation and great destruction. We believe exchange between our peoples could help guide your development toward peace and prosperity." Peter was skeptical but increasingly convinced of their peaceful intentions. The Luminari offered medical knowledge, clean energy technology, and scientific advancements beyond human understanding. Their only request was peaceful coexistence and cultural exchange. "We find human art, music, and philosophy fascinating," Zix explained. "Your capacity for creativity despite your brief lives is remarkable to us." As Peter prepared to return to Earth with the initial diplomatic proposal, Zix presented him with a small device. "A universal translator for your leaders," Zix said. "The first gift of many we hope to share." Unknown to Peter, across the ocean in a classified military facility, General Richard Hayward watched footage of the alien ships. Beside him stood Diane Miller, CEO of one of the world's largest technology corporations. "The propulsion system alone would be worth trillions," Miller said, studying the footage. "Not to mention their other technology, if they're offering to share it. Why are we meeting?" Hayward asked. Miller smiled. "Because getting it for free with their restrictions isn't the same as owning it outright. Think of what's at stake. Whoever controls this technology controls the future of humanity." "What are you suggesting?" Hayward leaned forward. "I'm suggesting we can't rely on alien generosity. We need leverage. Insurance." Miller opened her laptop. "My company has the scientists. You have the special forces. I call it Operation Safeguard, a contingency plan to protect humanity's interests." "You mean steal their technology?" "I mean, ensure we're not at a disadvantage," Miller corrected. "These aliens could be playing a long game. We need to be prepared." As Peter Collins delivered his hopeful message about new allies to the United Nations, Hayward and Miller began recruiting for their secret team. The Luminari had come in peace, but some on Earth were already planning betrayal. In the days that followed, cultural exchange centers were established in major cities. The public reaction shifted from fear to cautious optimism. News channels showed Luminari representatives teaching human doctors how to use devices that could cure diseases thought incurable. Peter worked 18-hour days, coordinating between Earth governments and the Luminari. He began to think of Zix not just as an alien diplomat, but as a friend. He believed they stood at the dawn of a new age for humanity. He had no idea that in the shadows, Operation Safeguard was growing, and the greatest opportunity in human history was about to become its greatest shame. 3 months passed since the Luminari arrived on Earth. The fear that first gripped people had mostly faded. In its place grew curiosity and wonder. The aliens had established 12 cultural exchange centers in major cities around the world. Each center was a marvel of architecture, buildings that seemed to be made of light and crystal, constructed in just days. Peter Collins had become the face of human-Luminari relations. His days were filled with meetings, press conferences, and long conversations with Zix. The more time Peter spent with the Luminari ambassador, the more he came to think of him as a friend rather than an alien diplomat. "Your world has such variety," Zix said as they walked through Central Park one morning. Children pointed and waved at the tall blue figure. Zix waved back. 17 different ecosystems on one planet. Our homeworlds are more uniform. I thought. "Your civilization spanned multiple star systems?" Peter said. "It does. 17 systems, 43 habitable worlds. But we've been spacefaring so long that our cultures blended centuries ago." Zix paused to examine a butterfly that landed on a nearby flower. "That's why human art and music fascinate us. You have so many distinct cultures on one world." The Luminari had begun sharing their knowledge as promised. Their medical technology was the first gift that truly changed lives. At New York Memorial Hospital, Dr. Susan Wright watched in amazement as a Luminari healer named Ilara used a small handheld device to treat a 10-year-old boy with stage 4 cancer. The device emitted a soft blue light that passed over the child's body. On the monitor nearby, Susan could see the cancer cells rapidly dying while healthy cells remained untouched. In 30 minutes, Jeremy Wilson went from terminal to cancer-free. "How does it work?" Susan asked, still staring at the medical scans. In disbelief, Ilara handed her the device. It identifies cells with damaged DNA patterns and repairs or removes them. "We can teach your doctors to use it." The technology is not complicated, just different from your approach. You could have sold this to us for trillions, Susan said. Alara's expression showed confusion. Why would we withhold knowledge that saves lives? That is not our way. News of medical miracles spread quickly. The Luminari also shared designs for clean energy systems that could replace fossil fuels. They offered faster-than-light travel technology that would allow humans to explore nearby star systems. All they asked in return was friendship and cultural exchange. Public opinion polls showed 78% of people worldwide supported the alliance. Street festivals celebrated the new friendship between species. Children played with toys shaped like Luminari ships. It seemed a new era of peace and progress had begun, but not everyone welcomed the aliens with open arms. In a secure underground facility outside Washington, D.C., General Richard Hayward reviewed the progress of Operation Safeguard with Diane Miller. The room was filled with scientists, intelligence agents, and military personnel working at computer stations. "We've analyzed the samples," a scientist reported. "Their technology is beyond anything we've ever seen. Their basic communication device has computing power that makes our most advanced supercomputers look like calculators." Miller nodded with satisfaction. "And the infiltration plan?" A man in a black uniform stepped forward. Captain Frank Powell was a decorated Special Forces officer with 20 years of covert operations experience. "My team has studied the layout of their orbital flagship," Powell said, pointing to detailed schematics on a large screen. "We've identified what we believe is their central database, all their technological knowledge in one place." "How did you get these schematics?" Hayward asked. "From the cultural exchange," Powell explained. "They've been completely open about their ship designs. They have no concept of military secrecy," Miller smiled. "Their naivety is our advantage." "And the entry point?" Hayward pressed. "They rotate personnel between the orbital ship and Earth every week. We've created perfect replicas of their shuttlecraft. We'll approach during the regular exchange, dock as usual, and my team will board disguised as maintenance workers." Hayward looked troubled. "The President hasn't authorized this operation. The President doesn't need to know," Miller said. "This is about protecting humanity's future. Once we have their technology, we control our own destiny." She placed a hand on Hayward's shoulder. "Richard, they might seem peaceful now, but can we really trust beings with this much power? What if their intentions change?" Hayward nodded slowly. "When do we move?" 3 weeks, Powell answered. "We'll need to place explosive devices as insurance. If something goes wrong, we can't leave their flagship intact." "Just make sure they don't get used," Hayward warned. "This is about securing technology, not starting a war." Meanwhile, at the New York Exchange Center, Peter was showing Zix examples of human music. The Luminari seemed especially moved by classical compositions. "This batch piece," Zix said, eyes closed as the music played, "it contains mathematical patterns we've observed in stellar formations. How could your composer know this without space travel?" "Some things might be universal," Peter suggested. Zix opened his eyes. "Perhaps that is why our peoples were meant to meet." That evening, Peter had dinner with Susan. They had become friends through their work with the Luminari. Over pasta at a small Italian restaurant, Susan told Peter about the medical miracles she witnessed daily. "They could have kept this technology to themselves," she said. "Instead, they're teaching us everything they know. I've never seen such generosity." "I think it's just their nature," Peter replied. Zix explained that their society evolved past violence and competition thousands of years ago. "They genuinely don't understand why we would withhold knowledge that could help others." "Not everyone sees it that way," Susan said, lowering her voice. "I've heard rumors about military interest in their technology." "There are always people who fear what they don't understand," Peter said. "But the world is changing. People are seeing what's possible when we work together." As they spoke, Captain Powell's team was completing final preparations. In a secure hangar, technicians added finishing touches to the replica shuttle. Weapons and explosives were disguised as maintenance Equipment. Fake credentials were created for the 12-person infiltration team. Miller addressed them the night before the mission. What you're about to do won't make you heroes in the public eye. Not yet, but future generations will thank you for ensuring humanity controls its own destiny. In orbit above Earth, the Luminary flagship continued its peaceful rotation. Unaware of the betrayal being planned below, Luminary scientists and diplomats prepared new technological gifts to share with their human friends. The stage was set for humanity's greatest shame. 6 months after the Luminary arrived on Earth, the day of betrayal came. It began like any other morning. The sun rose over New York City, reflecting off the Crystalline Exchange Center in Central Park. Inside, Peter Collins reviewed the day's schedule with his assistant. A group of schoolchildren would tour the facility at 10. After lunch, he would meet with Zix to discuss plans for a joint space mission. Peter had no idea that Operation Safeguard was launching today. 40 miles away in a private airfield, Captain Frank Powell and his team prepared to board their counterfeit Luminary shuttle. The 12 men wore perfect copies of the maintenance uniforms the Luminary used. Each carried hidden weapons and small explosive devices disguised as repair tools. Remember, Powell told his team, our primary objective is the central database. Download everything. The explosives are only insurance. We place them but don't activate them unless I give the direct order. The fake shuttle lifted off, its exterior shell made to look exactly like the Luminary vessels that regularly traveled between Earth and the orbiting flagship. Powell's team had studied the Luminary language and movement patterns. They knew the docking procedures and security protocols, all freely shared by the trusting aliens during cultural exchanges. In orbit, the massive Luminary flagship hung like a second moon. 3,000 Luminary lived aboard, coordinating the exchange programs and preparing the technology transfers promised to Earth. The ship's captain, Values, noticed the approaching shuttle on the monitoring system. Unusual, Values said to his flight controller. We don't have a maintenance crew scheduled for today. They sent a message, the controller replied. Apparently there's an issue with the environmental systems in the East Wing. Human representatives reported discomfort during yesterday's tour. Values nodded. The Luminary were always eager to ensure their human guests felt comfortable. Approve their docking request. Alert the engineering team to meet them. The shuttle docked smoothly with the flagship. Powell and his team stepped out, nodding respectfully to the Luminary who greeted them. Their disguises worked perfectly. The aliens led them toward the eastern wing, explaining the environmental control systems. We need to check the main junction first, Powell said in practiced Luminary language. It may be a central system problem. The Luminary guide agreed without suspicion and led them deeper into the ship. Once they reached a main corridor, Powell gave a silent hand signal. His team split into 3 groups as planned. 8 men followed the guide toward the environmental systems, keeping up the pretense. Powell and 3 others slipped away, heading for the ship's central data core. Meanwhile on Earth, synchronized attacks began at all 12 exchange centers. At the Chicago facility, armed men in black tactical gear stormed through the main entrance. They fired strange weapons that emitted pulses of energy rather than bullets. The Luminary inside fell without resistance. They made no attempt to fight. Back or flee. In London, Paris, Tokyo, and other cities across the globe, the same scene played out. The attackers moved with military precision, targeting the Luminary while mostly avoiding human casualties. In New York, Peter was showing a group of third graders the holographic star map when the attack began. The sound of breaking glass and screams from the entrance hall interrupted his explanation of the Luminary homeworld. Stay here, kids, he told the children, gesturing for their teacher to keep them in the room. Peter rushed toward the commotion. In the main hall, 5 armed men moved methodically through the space. Peter watched in horror as they fired at the Luminary, who simply stood, making no move to defend themselves. Several human staff members tried to intervene and were roughly pushed aside. Stop! Peter shouted. What are you doing? One of the attackers turned toward him. Government business. Stay back, Peter recognized the insignia on their gear, the same used by elite military units. "This is a diplomatic facility. You can't just—" His words were cut short as Zix appeared from a side corridor. The Luminari ambassador looked at the fallen bodies of his people, then at the armed men. His normally bright blue skin had dimmed to a pale gray. "Why?" Zix asked simply. An attacker fired his weapon. The energy pulse hit Zix directly in the chest. The tall alien stumbled backward but remained standing. 2 more shots finally brought him down. Peter ran to his friend, kneeling beside him on the floor. "Zix, hold on, we'll get help." The luminary's eyes flickered. "No time, they're attacking the flagship too. Quote, who's doing this?" "Why?" Peter demanded. Zix's hand moved to a pocket in his robe. He pressed a small crystal into Peter's palm. "Data. Truth, remember we came in peace." His voice faded as the light in his eyes dimmed. One of the attackers approached. "Step away from the alien, Collins." Peter recognized the voice. He looked up to see General Hayward removing a tactical helmet. You're behind this?" "It's called protecting our planet," Hayward replied. "These creatures were planning something. We just acted first." "That's a lie." Peter clutched the crystal tightly in his fist. "They never showed any aggression." In orbit, Powell and his team had reached the data core. The massive crystalline structure pulsed with light as it stored the accumulated knowledge of the Luminari civilization. They began connecting devices to download its contents. At the same time, they placed explosive charges at key structural points. "Hurry up," Powell urged the technician working on the download. "Something doesn't feel right. These aliens aren't even questioning why we're here." "They trust us," the technician replied, not looking up from his work. "That's their weakness." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Powell pressed his communication device. "Team 2, report." "What's happening?" "Sir, something went wrong," a panicked voice replied. "The explosives in Section 4, they've activated on their own." "Impossible! We haven't set the detonators." "Could be interference from their systems. We need to abort." The transmission cut off as the first explosion rocked the ship. The carefully planned operation was falling apart. Either through technical malfunction or human error, the insurance explosives were detonating prematurely. "Forget the download. Evacuate now," Powell ordered. His team abandoned their equipment and ran toward the docking bay. The flagship began breaking apart as multiple explosions tore through its structure. Powell and only 4 of his team made it back to their shuttle. As they detached from the dying ship, they watched in horror as the beautiful crystalline vessel that had housed 3,000 peaceful Luminari shattered into 1,000,000 glittering pieces. On Earth, chaos erupted as news of the attack spread. The official statement claimed the Luminari had been planning an invasion and the strikes were preventive self-defense. But videos from the exchange centers showed the truth. Aliens who made no move to fight back, slaughtered without provocation. Peter Collins, clutching the crystal Zix had given him, fled the New York Center before Hayward's men could stop him. He knew he held the truth and they would kill to keep it hidden. The greatest betrayal in human history was complete. The aliens had come in peace and humanity had answered with violence. 3 weeks passed since the attacks on the Luminari. Peter Collins lived in hiding, moving from one cheap motel to another. His face appeared on news broadcasts labeled as a person of interest in connection with alien sympathizer terrorist groups. The official story claimed the Luminari had been planning a full-scale invasion of Earth, and the military had acted just in time to save humanity. Most people believed this story. It was easier to accept than the truth that humans had betrayed and murdered peaceful visitors. The remaining Luminari vessels had retreated beyond the moon. Everyone expected them to attack Earth in revenge, but day after day passed with no sign of retaliation. Military experts couldn't explain this behavior. If the aliens were truly hostile, why hadn't they struck back? Peter knew why. He had spent the past weeks trying to access the crystal Zix had given him with his dying breath. Finally, in a small apartment borrowed from a friend, he found a way. The crystal responded to light in a specific pattern. When Peter shined his phone flashlight through it at just the right angle, it projected images onto the wall. The images showed the complete history of the Luminari civilization. It revealed a species that had evolved beyond violence thousands of years ago. Their biology had changed over time. They physically lacked the capacity for deception. They literally could not lie, most importantly. The crystal contained files about Operation Safeguard, proof that human military and corporate leaders had planned the attack from the beginning. Their goal was never protection from invasion. They wanted the Luminari technology to sell for profit and military advantage. Peter needed help to share this truth with the world. He risked contacting Susan Wright, the doctor who had worked with Luminari healers. When she received his message, Susan didn't hesitate. She had been treating wounded Luminari who survived the attacks and had discovered something important about their biology. They met in a quiet diner outside the city. Susan arrived wearing a hat and sunglasses as disguise. "You're taking a big risk meeting me," Peter said. "They're calling me a traitor." "I know you're not," Susan replied. She pulled out a medical tablet and showed him test results. "Look at these scans of Luminari brain patterns. Their brains physically cannot produce the patterns associated with deception. They're literally incapable of planning an invasion while pretending to be peaceful. It's not biologically possible for them." Peter showed her what he had learned from the crystal. "We need to get this information out, but how?" "The government controls the major news networks." "Not all of them," Susan said. "I have a contact, Ryan Murphy. He's an independent journalist with a large online following. He's been questioning the official story since day one." Ryan agreed to meet them the next day. He was a tall man with keen eyes that missed nothing. He examined the crystal data and Susan's medical evidence carefully. "This is the biggest story in human history," he said finally, "and the most dangerous. They'll do anything to keep this hidden. Can you help us share it?" Peter asked. Ryan nodded. "I have secure servers outside the country. Once we upload the data, it can't be erased. But we need to be smart about this. We need more allies." Over the next week, they built a network of truth seekers, former Luminari Exchange Program workers, scientists who had studied with the aliens, government officials who had been kept in the dark about Operation Safeguard, even a few military personnel disgusted by what had been done in their name. Meanwhile, Diane Miller faced growing problems. Her corporation's stock was falling as rumors spread about their involvement in the attacks. In her private office, she met with General Hayward. "The public is asking too many questions," she said. "That video from the London Center showing the Luminari not fighting back has gone viral. People are wondering why peaceful invaders didn't defend themselves." "We need to find Collins," Hayward replied. "He has something information from the ambassador before he died. My sources say he's working with others now. What about the aliens? Why haven't they attacked? It's been almost a month." Hayward shook his head. "We don't know. The remaining ships just sit there beyond the moon. They've made no aggressive moves. It doesn't fit with the invasion narrative." "Then make it fit," Miller snapped. "Stage something if you have to." In his hiding place, Peter worked with Ryan to prepare the data for release. They organized the evidence into a clear story anyone could understand. Susan contributed medical proof of the Luminaries' peaceful nature. "There's something else we need to try," Peter said one evening. "I want to contact the Luminari ships." "How?" Ryan asked. "All official channels are monitored." Susan spoke up. "I might know a way. I've been treating a Luminari named Tila who survived the attack on the Dallas Center. She says their ships can detect specific light patterns from Earth's surface. With Tila's help, they built a simple device that could send pulses of light in Luminari communication patterns. On a clear night, they took it to the roof of an abandoned building and aimed it at the sky. "What message should we send?" Susan asked. "The truth," Peter replied. "That not all humans were part of the betrayal. That some of us want justice." They sent the message, not knowing if it would be received or understood. 3 days later, they got their answer. Peter's secure phone received a transmission unlike anything he'd seen before. The message appeared directly on the screen without coming through any Earth-based network. "We understand this was not humanity's choice, but the actions of few. We grieve, but do not seek vengeance. That is not our way." The message continued with coordinates and a time. The Luminari were offering to meet with Peter's group. "They're willing to talk to us after everything we did to them," Susan said, tears in her eyes. "We need to go public before this meeting," Ryan insisted. "The world needs to know the truth first." They chose a day and time to release everything. The crystal data, the medical evidence, the testimony from their growing network of allies, and the message from the Luminari. They would stream it simultaneously across thousands of channels, making it impossible to silence all at once. The night before the release, Peter stood at the window of their temporary headquarters, looking at the stars. "Do you think people will believe us?" Susan asked, joining him. "Some will, some won't want to. It's easier to believe we're the heroes who stopped an invasion than accept we're the villains who murdered peaceful visitors." "And the Luminari? Why are they still willing to talk to humans after what we did?" Peter thought about everything he had learned about the aliens in the past months. "Because they're better than us. They evolved past violence and revenge. Maybe they hope we can too." The next morning, they prepared to tell the world the truth about the greatest betrayal in human history, and the unexpected forgiveness that followed it. 1 year had passed since the day of betrayal. The world had changed completely after Peter Collins and his allies released the truth. The data crystal from Zix, the medical evidence from Susan, and testimony from dozens of witnesses had spread across the globe in hours. No government could contain it. People saw with their own eyes the proof that the Luminari had come in peace, and a small group of powerful humans had chosen violence for profit. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Protests filled the streets in every major city. People demanded justice for the murdered aliens and accountability from those responsible. The United Nations called an emergency session to address what many now called humanity's greatest shame. General Richard Hayward and Diane Miller faced international tribunals for crimes against peace. Captain Frank Powell and surviving members of his team were also arrested. During the trials, the full extent of Operation Safeguard was revealed. Miller's corporation had already begun developing weapons based on stolen Luminari technology. The plan had never been about protecting Earth, only about gaining power and wealth. In a courtroom filled with cameras from around the world, Miller finally admitted the truth. "Yes, we knew they were peaceful. That made them perfect targets. They wouldn't fight back." The judge's sentence was simple. For the calculated murder of 3,000 peaceful beings and the betrayal of all humanity's better nature, you will spend the remainder of your lives in prison. But punishment alone couldn't undo the damage. The remaining Luminari vessels still kept their distance beyond the moon. Though they had sent messages of understanding rather than threats, trust had been broken. Many feared the relationship could never be repaired. Peter Collins had become a respected voice in the new world order that emerged from the crisis. No longer hiding, he now led a diplomatic initiative to rebuild trust with the Luminari. His office occupied the top floor of the rebuilt United Nations Plaza in New York. The old building had been replaced with a new structure that incorporated both human and Luminari architectural elements, a symbol of hope for reconciliation. Susan Wright-headed a new medical exchange program. Even after the betrayal, the Luminari had continued to share healing technology through their limited communications. Susan worked with doctors worldwide to use these gifts responsibly, always remembering the generosity of those who had been so poorly repaid for their kindness. Ryan Murphy's journalism had earned him global recognition. His news network focused on truth and transparency, values that seemed more important than ever in a world still coming to terms with its own capacity for both nobility and treachery. On the anniversary of the attacks, these three friends stood together on the platform of the newly completed monument in Central Park. The structure was simple, but beautiful, a crystalline spiral that caught the light like a Luminari ship. Embedded within it were the names of every Luminari who had died in the betrayal, written in both human and alien script. "Do you think they'll come?" Susan asked, looking up at the clear blue sky. Peter nodded. "They said they would. The Luminari keep their promises." Hundreds of thousands of people had gathered for the ceremony. Many carried candles or flowers. Children released blue balloons into the sky, the color of Luminari skin. The mood was solemn but hopeful. At exactly noon, a flash of light appeared. Above the crowd, a small Luminari vessel, more elegant and simple than their previous ships, descended slowly toward the open area near the monument. People gasped but remained calm. This moment had been prepared for carefully. The ship landed gently on the grass. Its door opened and 5 Luminari emerged. They were taller than humans remembered, their blue skin glowing softly in the sunlight. The lead figure was immediately recognizable to Peter: Tila, the healer who had survived the Dallas attack and helped them contact the ships. Peter, Susan, and Ryan stepped forward as Earth's representatives. Behind them stood 500 humans chosen from around the world. Scientists, artists, teachers, doctors, and ordinary citizens who had spoken out for truth and justice after the betrayal. Peter spoke first, his voice carried by speakers to the crowd and broadcast globally. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome you back to Earth. We offer our deepest apology for the terrible wrongs committed against your people. This monument stands as our promise to remember and our commitment that such a betrayal will never happen." Again, he presented a small crystal similar to the one Zix had given him, but this one contained human history, art, and music. "We offer this gift as a renewed request for friendship, if you can find it in your hearts to trust us again." Tila accepted the crystal with a graceful gesture. When she spoke, her voice was musical and clear. "The true measure of intelligence is not technological achievement, but the capacity to learn from mistakes. Some among us questioned whether humanity was ready for contact. Today proves those who believed in humanity's potential were correct." She turned to address the crowd. "We see before us a species capable of both terrible destruction and remarkable redemption. This is not unusual in the development of intelligent life. What matters is the direction you choose moving forward." Tila then revealed the Luminaries' decision. They would return to Earth, not with their full population yet, but with representatives to establish a new joint human Luminari council. The technological exchange would resume, but with greater oversight and transparency from both sides. "We do not offer this second chance out of naivety," Tila explained, "but because we recognize humanity's capacity for growth. The fact that you have held your own people accountable shows your commitment to justice. The fact that you build monuments to remember shows your capacity for reflection." As the ceremony concluded, Peter looked out at the faces in the crowd. There were tears and smiles, relief and determination. The path ahead would not be easy. Trust once broken takes time to rebuild. But for the first time in a year, he felt genuine hope. Later that evening, Peter stood alone by the monument. The day's events were over, the crowds gone home. In the quiet twilight, he placed his hand on the smooth crystal surface where Zix's name was engraved. "We almost lost our soul," he whispered. "But in finding the courage to face what we did, perhaps we found something more valuable than any technology. The Luminari could share a moral compass that might finally guide humanity to the stars with dignity." Above him, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Among them, the lights of Luminari ships twinkled like new constellations, not threatening but promising. A reminder that second chances, while rare in the universe, were possible when wisdom prevailed over fear and truth over deception. Humanity had betrayed those who came in peace. But in that darkest moment, they had found their way back to the light.